Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, delighted to be talking with author and creator CL Werner. May I call you CL? How would you like me to name you?
If it's easier on you, you can just call me Clint.
Clint. All right, that works. Well, you're the author of a variety of series, and I'll mention a couple here: Matthias Tholman, Brunner the Bounty Hunter, the Malice Darkblade series, and you have other series books as well. So, quite a prolific amount of creating that you've done.
I'd do one slight correction there. I only wrote the final Malice Darkblade book. The
Yes,
rest of
yes.
it was Dan Abnett and Mike Lee.
Yes, yes, thank you. I'll make sure and amend that and fix that in the final. But you've certainly been prolific and collaborated in these worlds, and I'm curious about your introduction to writing. How did you know that authoring and writing were the space that you wanted to be part of?
I think it really starts with being an avid reader, pretty much my entire life. I think I read The Hobbit when I was 4 or 5. It was
Hmm.
right around
Hmm.
the time they broadcast the cartoon, so I guess we could call that the gateway drug.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great book. I've taught that in my English class, and um, really has probably launched countless careers at this point. Great mentor text, The Hobbit.
Yeah, I'd say the author that really kind of got me inspired to actually start writing though was Robert E. Howard,
Oh yeah.
because
Hmm.
Tolkien's prose, it's so beautiful, it's intimidating. Robert E.
Yeah.
Howard has a deceptive simplicity in the way that he writes. And I say deceptive because when you try to write like him, you really do appreciate, oh, he knew exactly what he was doing. It
Hmm.
might take
Hmm.
5 words
True.
to describe a city, but he knows exactly which 5 words.
Very true. Yeah. Well, I imagine at the feet of these masters that had a lot to do with your creating, and it sounds like that was a quick draw to fantasy. What has fantasy, darker fiction kind of allowed you to explore?
Well, I think especially when you get into horror and dark fantasy, anything that's really has that trace of the fantastic to it, it
Hmm.
allows you to explore evil, but with like an extra stopgap between the reader and what's going on. There's that little safety net of, oh, vampires aren't real, so we're okay here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely
Yeah, I mean,
true.
just as entertainment value too. I think that's why I'm drawn to fantastical stories. What I think Christopher Lee used to prefer. He didn't like the term horror because to him horror was like serial killers and gangsters and you know espionage, that kind of a thing.
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of an invitation to a little escape and a little bit of a
Yeah,
different world that still looks like ours.
yeah, exactly. That little extra level of escapism.
Yeah, yeah. How has your writing process changed? Any particular parts of your writing process that you find especially helpful?
I'm a big supporter of always outline everything. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, you obviously have some wiggle room there once you're actually into it. I know I've had characters that have kind of hijacked stories before, where especially Grace You're Thankful when I was writing those novels. He would just have these rants of paranoid delusions that I'd later have to go back and prune, and I don't know where they came from. They just, suddenly I'd have 5 pages of this guy talking about who's getting ready to betray him and how he's going to betray them first, and just circular logic. I think an outline, especially if that kind of thing happens to you once in a while, it helps you know the road ahead so you can prune the weeds.
Yeah. Yeah. And hearkening back to some of the authors we were mentioning at the beginning, this idea of world building, like creating a world that's like our world, but it's not. Any kind of approaches to world building that you engage with?
I think one of the big things I've always tried, especially like my Shintaro Oba stories, they're kind of set in a Japanese inspired fantasy setting that's as much Japan as Middle Earth was England. But
Hmm.
I find with that, it's nice to incorporate anything from real historical sources that you can, as long as it fits with the overall theme for the world. So you don't just rigidly reproduce Edo era Japan. You're
Hmm.
just kind of using that as your foundation point. And I've always tried to do that, even with some of the shared universe stuff. Recently, I did some work with Kings of War with their invasion book for the new fourth edition, and we have essentially what are kind of a Mongol Chinese faction in there, but God had that fantastic element, the hierarchy or dogmen,
Hmm.
and it was sort of playing around with not just Mongol culture and Chinese culture, but also how would that get tweaked if you're dealing with the sort of instincts and sensations of dogs? So it became almost like a hunter pack mentality that was in charge of everything.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you do a good bit of research for some of those historical aspects, and then some nice creative blending too to bring uniqueness to it.
Well, I think that's unfortunately a trap you can fall into is you have to know when you've got enough research to do
Mm,
project ahead, because otherwise you can dive into that rabbit hole and just go on forever. That was one of the main reasons with my Shintaro Oba stories. I actually abandoned my initial plans of doing kind of historical fantasy with it. I was like, this is just such a huge subject and I'll never get it right. So I'm going to kind of take what I want and do my own thing with it.
yeah, yeah. I also imagine that the kind of outlining that you were talking about helps when you're thinking about crafting a multiple chapter series kind of approach with not just one book, but a set of books.
I've always found that it's best to have each book be kind of its own beast. You can leave a few threads that you'll pursue in the next novel, allowing that it happens.
Hmm.
But you
Hmm.
don't want it to where it depends on that sequel happening. A good reference point I always use is the second Pirates of the Caribbean movie, which I thought was pretty good, but it
Hmm.
couldn't stand on its own and it depended on the third movie, which I thought was terrible. So it reduces the appreciation for the second movie.
Yeah, yeah, I get that, and I would agree with that assessment as well. So, what's it been like to work with Aconyte and to explore the worlds that are possible there?
Oh, Aconyte has been a really diverse a variety of projects. I've done a short story for Keyforge. I've done some work with the Marvel Universe through their Legends of Asgard line. But most prominently, I think, would be the Zombicide books. So I did a trilogy of novels for Zombicide, Black Plague, Age of the Undead, Isle of the Undead, and City of the Undead. And they each, again, can kind of stand on their own, but they have little roots that spread into the next book in the series. And be very interested to see where they go with that, since Asmodee is now doing a new Zombicide board game. So could be good things in the future.
Creating continues. Creating continues. What is next in your creative agenda? What are you exploring right now?
At the moment, I'm doing a novel for Aconyte. They haven't announced it yet, so I can't really do any kind of deep details on it. Um, I hope it'll be entertaining for people, but it's a little bit of a sidetrack from sort of the dark fantasy, flirts more into the horror angle.
Nice.
Um, I am in talks with Sentinel down in South Africa. We're planning a historical fantasy novel, which hopefully will happen this year. And then I've been in discussions about getting some more Shintaro Oba stories out there.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Um, Along the way, as you've been creating, you mentioned getting to craft in book series that other creators have been part of. Any interactions, collaborations, or experiences that have kind of risen to the top for you?
Well, I'd definitely be remiss if I didn't mention Howard Andrew Jones, because he helped me out enormously. He was very encouraging about kind of doing my own original material rather than just staying rigidly into shared IPs. So, and he some of the insights that he gave me when I'd you know sadly all too rare occasions when I'd submit stories to him to consider really were inspirational. They even if it wasn't something I could use in that story, I'd jot it down and use it as a foundation for another story.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, I appreciate the world building. I appreciate the creating. Did we miss anything that you want to make sure to mention before we tell people where to find more about your work?
I know Iron Age Media is working on a couple of new magazines, Battleborn among them, which the aforementioned Shintaro Oba is actually on the cover, which really excited me. But I think those are supposed to be getting into print this year. So that'll be
Oh,
something to keep an eye out for.
awesome, awesome. Any spaces online, convention spaces, things of that nature where people can connect with the work and interact with you?
Probably the best way to interact me is either to track me down on Goodreads or Facebook. I don't have very much of a, say, online presence. I did start up a Ko-fi, which right now has a Shintaro Oba story called Demon Fire on there, and that is a installment in Michael Stackpool's current chain story project. So I was very humbled to be invited to kind of participate in a round robin with somebody that I read way before I was an author. So that
Yeah,
was kind of a feather in the cap.
very good company. Very good company.